Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
I think we're all back except for Stacy.
Jason, did you have something to say?
I was going to ask if the chair would entertain the motion to add Dr. Toro to the BAC.
Need to do roll
Yes.
call, Tanya.
Yeah, let me do roll call again real quick, Jason, before we do that. So let's do that. Montserrat. Jason,
Present.
Herminia. Stacy. Taylor,
Present.
Dora,
Present.
Dr. Siqueiros,
Present.
Xenia.
Here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so Taylor, would that motion now be in order?
Yes.
Thank you. So I make the motion to add Dr. Toro to the BAC committee.
And I will second that.
Second it. Okay.
All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstain? All right. Next item is the minutes. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I second it.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstain? All right, and then we'll move on to 6.1. The first budget priority to discuss today was the elective classes staffing ratios for fine arts and school safety. Let's see. So I had asked Joseph a few questions that had come up from our last couple of meetings. So Joseph, would you be able to kind of talk through those questions that I sent you and your answers to those?
Sorry, yeah. You would answer some questions, and I'm sorry, in the nature of my job, sometimes I'm not able to always be in my office. So I'm actually currently not on a mobile device, but so I'm not able to see. Would it be possible if you could walk through the questions that I can speak to them specifically, because I don't want to get into them wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know there was a couple that I'm still having to wait from, still working through, because there's some ratio questions you had to, and I wanted to confirm some information prior to those responses.
Absolutely. And if it's easier for you, I have your answers on here too. I could just read through it if that's any better for you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, and then I can answer any questions that you guys may have specifically about them.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the list of questions that I sent him was just came up during our request for information at some of the previous board meetings. So the first question was, how could more monitors have helped in a situation like the viral incident at Tucson High School? Just as I said, I'm assuming that you're referring to the day that we had several fights break out and the school went into lockdown. While I can't definitively say the entire incident could have been prevented, there was an unfortunate assault on a monitor during that episode that might have been averted if the monitor wasn't alone. In my experience, the presence of some form of authority has been the best deterrent to crime and undesirable behavior. Also, having more monitors would afford them additional time to establish relationships with students, offering an effective means to gather information consistently assess the school's climate and culture. The second question was, what monitor ratio would you consider to be ideal, both to student to monitor and the acreage that we had seen in the slideshow there? He said, I hesitate to offer a specific number as it depends on the unique circumstances. Numerous variables come into play, such as ongoing feuds among students, the overall climate and culture of the school, and more. Unlike certain industries that may establish standards, there are no universally recognized benchmarks for student to monitor ratios in schools. While some security professionals may propose ratios for events like concerts or festivals, applying these to a school setting might not be suitable. A notable ratio for a different role is the National Association of School Counselors recommends 1 counselor to every 250 students. I'd also asked him about the breakdown of the area to monitor ratios that we had seen for high schools, being able to see that for middle schools as well, but he's still working on that. And then also with, we had discussed about like discipline rates compared to the current monitor ratios, and he is still working on that data as well. Right, so we have any questions for Joseph? Yeah, Stacy, go ahead.
Sorry, and then I actually brought this up with Joe earlier today. I don't just think it's monitors that we have assigned, but when somebody is absent or goes on leave, that puts us in position. So maybe even looking at, for safety sake, like we have some roving custodians that can come into our buildings, but really look at that for campuses, because I know in a lot of different events, that just puts you in a compromising position if people aren't at work for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and you know, for the good of the committee, earlier I spoke with at our ILA group, and basically I was inquiring, you know, and trying to put together a committee, kind of further examining our monitors and our current situation, as well as exploring ways we can do it better moving forward. Part of that and some of the recommendations I've received thus far were the addition of roving monitors that can not only assist when there's specific incidents or the report of potential incidents, say, you know, threats or any other situations. They could also assist with events when we did need additional security personnel at that school. But also they could fill in for individuals who may be calling in sick. You know, the example I gave earlier was, you know, we've seen over the last couple of years that our virus is spread, and these individuals oftentimes work closely together. So when, you know, some of these individuals get sick, it's not just one of them are getting sick, but oftentimes it'll be multiple. So instead of that campus going short, having some individuals who can either float over from a different school, or even better yet, have some floating monitors that just can kind of go in and fill in for the day, and ensure that they have all the necessary resources they have to ensure the safety and security of the student, staff, and the rest of the community.
Dora, go ahead.
I do know that all monitors get ongoing training throughout the year. I was wondering if there's any possibility of also offering that same kind of training, but for support staff. So when there's a shortage of monitors or somebody like that, basically having them trained as well, even though it's not their job, but they really serve and support the schools in every way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, everybody across the district can benefit from some of the training we provide, because it's you know, like I talked about earlier, it's constantly taking the temperature of the climate and culture of the school. It's de-escalation techniques. Teachers are often on the front line of those. So it's not just necessarily monitors having to deal with the situation. It's pretty much everybody across the district that can benefit from that. Trouble we run into is, you know, that takes away from time learning other skills. So it's while it's constantly an ask of mine, of course, I'm always going to ask for more training, and the more people I can get in front of and provide this information to, the better for us to create that culture of safety that we're always working to try to attain. You know, it's just I have competing. There's a lot of competition for the time for the teachers and principals associated with this district, because they're also busy.
Right, any other questions for Joseph at the moment? Okay, so I think we should move in towards thinking of a recommendation to take to the board on this item. I'm open to any suggestions, but kind of from the discussion that we've had so far, it feels like maybe we're moving towards thinking of some sort of like minimum monitor ratio, and then also the idea of having these roving monitors available to try to keep that ratio even when people are out sick. Yeah, Joseph.
Yeah, and again, for the good of the committee, if I may, again, my intent is to not just kind of come at this just from the school safety standpoint, but I really want to put together a planning team so we can really get a robust idea of what the needs are of the individual schools and just, you know, and administrators within those schools and the teachers and staff. So we're really looking to get a group of people together to really dive into this discussion more. Again, I can look from the outside into a school, but I've never been a teacher, I've never been an administrator. I'd really like to get more of their insights so I can provide a much more detailed recommendation to this committee, who can subsequently take it to the board if that's acceptable to you. Unless, you know, again, it's your committee, that would just be my little bit of input on and or recommendation.
Could you clarify what your ask is?
Well, I think you had said that you were looking for maybe a motion to take something to the board, specifically having to do with ratios and or rovers. All I'm saying at this point is, while I would love that, I would love to be able to provide you with more concrete information, so you can have more specifics to take to the board going forward. But again, that would just be, you know, I'm not part of this committee. I'm not sure what how that usually operates. I just wanted to provide that information.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Are there any other thoughts from the board members here about any recommendations that we could take to the board on this?
If I may, there's that's matter. We do get a lot of, you know, we hear this fairly often about the monitors. It probably comes, if not every board meeting, at least monthly and emails that we get. So it's definitely, I think, I don't want to qualify it as a hot topic, but I guess I would. It's definitely something that we see come across us.
Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm struggling personally just as far as like giving an exact piece of language that would dictate I guess specific amounts that we're recommending to the governing board. For me, I guess I feel like maybe it needs to be a group of folks diving deeper to look at what would be a minimum to take into account the size of a campus, right? But if somebody has a way that they could, I mean, we could make that as a motion, right? But if somebody has a way that maybe would be more succinct, or somebody has a way to get to something, maybe we really do. Others disagree and they say, no, we want to give a hard, cap or something like that. I'm certainly open. I just think that for me, that's where my holdup is. That's why I haven't come forward with a motion.
Yeah. Dora, go ahead.
I agree with Jason. I think when it comes to something like this, there has to be a committee that really looks at all the different variables that impact the school. And again, it could be the area, how many monitors, the training involved, all these different variables that need to be explored and really looked at before making any kind of recommendation in general.
Albert, go ahead. Albert, did you have something you wanted to add?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so no, I just thank you. I apologize for that. I thought I had it unmuted. So I think this is a really complex matter, and I agree with the two previous statements that it does require a little bit more information to make something practical and useful for the board to consider. I just don't feel I have enough information right now to be able to do that. I agree that they're perhaps putting together a committee of principals and parents and or students that can help drive this conversation at a much deeper level and provide us some more information of what they're thinking about. Having been a school principal myself as well, I understand this, and it's really complex, and we all want, as principals, we all want more. But recognizing that we have limited resources, how do we manage this and make this work across the district so that our kids are safe, our staffs are safe, our visitors and other members of the community are safe while at our schools? So yeah, I concur that I'm not ready yet to even consider a motion at this particular point.
Vicky, go ahead.
So just to kind of piggyback on Dr. Cicato's comments, if I just want to reiterate something we talked about when you all first started, if you can't arrive at a consensus for the variety of reasons that you've already been mentioning, it's okay to not have one, to not have a recommendation, and just to say to the board, look, this is such a complex issue, or we know there's not enough funding, or whatever the case may be, and let the board know that that's what happened. Which might be enough to let the board know that they need to spend more time diving a little bit deeper into this issue, whatever the case may be. So just know that it's okay to not have a recommendation on a particular one. I know that a previous BAC did that. So
Albert, go ahead.
So could our recommendation be that we ask the board to consider convening a committee and then look at this a little bit deeper to help them make that decision?
Yeah, I believe so. Would anyone like to go ahead and put that forward as a motion? All right, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask Albert if you would accept that as a motion. I'd be happy to second it.
Yes, I move that as a motion, yes.
So then with that, Taylor, I would second.
All in favor of the motion to recommend the governing board establish a committee to look further at school safety, say aye.
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 Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. All right, so we will go ahead and move on to 6.2, which is about benefits.
So John couldn't be here. He's currently working on something for Dr. Trujillo. But I know that last go around the committee wanted to take a look at different scenarios of premiums, and I did put those together, just knowing that that's something that you all wanted to look at. Let me get these going really quickly so that you can kind of see what we're talking about when it comes to just the variety that exists when it comes to putting together a lot of these recommendations to the board. So there's gonna be a lot of numbers, and I know it's like after 4, so bear with me. I will talk you through them. Okay, so this top half is our top chunk of the spreadsheet. This is currently what we do now, right? So we have 3 plans in the district, and employee, EE is employee, just so acronyms. EE is employee, SP is spouse, CH is child, FAM is family. This is currently how it's funded. So district, for a PPO, for example, the district pays 504, and then the employee pays 8911, and these are on a monthly basis. Okay, and it goes down from there. you can see the $1,500 deductible HDHP or high deductible health plan and the $3,000 deductible high deductible health plan. Obviously, the further you go out, the cheaper it becomes, right? The PPO plan is our most expensive. It is also our most rich or generous when it comes to benefits. So you can see that the splits, one thing I may have not mentioned previously is all of the employee collective bargaining agreements require that if the district provides a PPO plan, that the district pay that the employee's share of the premium is no more than 15%. So the district is always covering 85% of whatever the cost of the premium for employee only single coverage is for the PPO plan. Everything else is just based on the economics of the district, and trying to kind of play and figure out like how we can make it work. But because we have to fund that 85-15 first, we have to make sure that we're funding that first before we fund every other plan. So these are the current premiums. Like I mentioned, this is what everybody is currently paying on a monthly basis. So what we know for next school year or for next fiscal year is that we're going to have an 8% increase to the cost of the premiums. So when we look at this, just looking at the employee only, we're looking probably at a more like a 10% increase. And the reason for that is the board has given subsidies to the premiums to all employees. So even though this shows an 8% increase, the actual increase is 4%. And that sounds confusing. So the premiums themselves are only going up 4%, but because we've been subsidizing people's premiums for such a long time, they now have to catch up from a lower bar. I mean, Jason, you're the math guy, right? So, they're basically starting lower than where they should be. And now they're having to catch up even more so to what the actual premium has to be, which is why it's like more of an 8% increase for next year. So you can see, everybody is experiencing the same increases. The splits are the same. So you can see 37, 63s, they're all equal. On an annual basis, so this year, for example, we're estimating spending about employees and the district together are expected to spend about $34.5 million on insurance. For next year, we're expecting to spend about $42 million district-wide. So, and that's in the employees. The district share itself of that is about 34 million. So it's consistent to kind of what we've been spending in the last year, which, well, it's 27 million. So, it's consistent to what the increases are going to look like. But the increase to the medical insurance premiums are on par with what our partners are experiencing. So that's what's happening. But you all wanted to talk about a variety of scenarios. And again, lots of numbers. So one scenario that you all suggested was provide free PPO for the employee only. So make them pay nothing, but don't provide any other plan under the PPO. No, nothing for spouses, for children, for families. Move all of those individuals over to the high deductible health plan. Because of that, we're also assuming that if we're going to make the PPO plan for employees free, then I'm using an estimate of about 25% of people who are single only on the high deductible health plans are going to jump ship and move over, right? Because now I'm going to go from paying something to paying nothing. And so that there's an incentive to do that. Also, we're moving all of the people who had a PPO plan with a spouse, a kid, or family to the 1,500, because we're assuming that basically people aren't going to move to the furthest deductible. They're probably going to move to the one that's like closest to where they are right now, even though they're going to pay a little bit more out of pocket. The other thing is this assumes that the per member per month cost is going to go up 10% from October. So if, people are going to, because now they're moving to the PPO plan and they have a lower deductible, the usage of the plan is going to go up, right? People are going to spend more time doing what they got to do on their plans that they may have not been doing on the high deductible health plan because they didn't, they couldn't reach the deductible. So we're assuming that based on the October 2023 per member per month, we're going to spend 10% more money on the increase. So that's a lot, right? So this is essentially the annualized cost. So the district will end up spending $38 million more, or $38 million on insurance, while employees will spend about $3 million on insurance. If this all kind of happens this way, right? Because we're booting everybody off. And so these are the more expensive tiers, right? And that's why we're generating savings, because these tiers are the most expensive ones, right? We're covering people's dependents on a plan that's already expensive to begin with. We're moving all of those dependents on a plan that is less expensive. So that's why you're generating some savings, and it's somewhat comparable to what we're kind of spending for next year. Next year we're going to spend about 42 million. 38 million is about what we would be spending. But that assumes that we're going to have an increase in usage rates. So yeah, so and then another 34 million. Well, there's $34 million in about per member per month, the annualized cost, right? So we're going to spend about $4 million more on covering people's deductibles as well. So really, it's about 42 million. So there's really not a ton of savings when you take a look at the premiums and you add the cost of claims going up. I'll stop right there. Do you guys have any questions? Because I know everybody but Jason can ask a question, because Jason's a math guy and I don't want to do math.
I'm math too, so we're both out then.
Dang it.
Jason, go ahead.
Sorry, Ricky.
Yeah.
The slide that you're on right now, if I'm reading it correctly, that 38 million, doesn't that come from the 34 million and the 4 million, those two numbers below it? So it's not 38 plus 4, it's
Right,
34
it's
plus 4,
38.6. Right? Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
there is a savings, and I'm not saying that therefore we should go with that. I'm just clarifying. There is a little bit of a savings with that. By doing so, anybody who has dependents, spouse or dependents under the PPO plan lose that, which there's some significance to that. But just to clarify, there would be a little bit of a savings within the district. Okay.
Yeah, there would be a little bit of savings. We would generate a little bit of savings based on October's usage, like you said. And like I mentioned before, because covering an employee plus dependents is more expensive, right? They were all these expensive plans. I mean, right now the monthly cost to an employee to cover in the PPO is $1,200. So they're going from covering their entire family as an employee for $1,200 to covering, I didn't actually put the rates here, but they're covering a significant number, amount less than that. So yeah, there's a lot of cross movement, because we know people are going to jump ship from the other high deductible plans over to the PPO plan. This assumes that we're increasing the amount of money that we're spending on people's insurance, because now they're gonna do the things that we've been wanting them to do, which is go more to their doctors versus going to ERs and all of that stuff, because it's cheaper, right? They have predictable costs.
Yeah, Albert, go ahead.
Yeah, Ricky, can you clarify, did you say that the cost to the employee with family is going down? Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, because right now, an employee on the PPO plan with a family pays $1,100 a month, right? So if we move these people over to the high deductible health plan, they're going to pay 1/3 of what they've been paying now, because it's a cheaper plan, right, for more covered lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but their deductible goes up, so they're paying
Right.
more there,
Yeah,
right?
that's the caveat. The deductible will go up, right? Because right now, if they have I believe it's a $750 deductible, they're not going to have to pay a double deductible before their coverage kicks in. So
Right.
you're kind of trading off, right? Like
Right.
you're saving money in your paycheck, but ultimately you're going to have to pay money out of pocket on your healthcare.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see what it would look like to have an option that would be free to employees. I think that that would be a cool option. But yeah, the way that we would have to set it up in order to not make that crazy expensive, where we're kind of taking away options from families here, isn't really
Yeah.
favorable to me.
Yeah, the additional option that I put together is similar to the one above. But I said, okay, let's increase the health savings account to 1,500. Right now we do 1,200 for everybody. So bring it up to 1,500, but then move some of these people to like a $3,000 high deductible. It stays about the same. It's 38.7, 38.6. So we're not, because we're not going to spend so much more money. And some people may say, I'll just go all the way over to 3,000. Maybe. I mean, personally, I wouldn't. I mean, if I'm covering my family and I'm on the PPO plan, for example, which I'm not, I wouldn't move to the highest deductible. But I mean, assuming that maybe like a third of those people decided to do that, we're still spending about $38 million. So it doesn't do too much to even increase the health savings account. That might be like a carrot to get people to move over, right? If we're covering 50% of your deductible of that $3,000 plan.
Is this option here also like saying that the PPO would not be an option that?
Yeah, the
the
PPO would
1,500
not be an option. Correct. Sorry about that. I did miss that. So getting rid of the PPO altogether and lumping everybody.
Jason, go ahead.
Ricky, have you looked, has anybody looked at the kind of, I guess, the age brackets and the makeup of who's choosing which plan? Because and then how that correlates with the age of our staff, right? And kind of comparing those two, because my guess, but I haven't looked at these numbers. My assumption would be the PPO is probably older folks that are staff members. And then my question connected to that would be, are we as an organization, do we tend to be older? Do we tend to be more in 30s or 40s? That kind of thing as we start kind of diving deeper into this.
Yeah, so on average, our covered lives are older than our peers. So I believe we're in, our average age is somewhere in the mid 40s. So we're covering a lot fewer people who are in their 20s and 30s. They are choosing not to pick any health insurance with us. And those that do, they're picking the PPO plan, right? Because, not like $40 a paycheck, that I think they probably feel like they can swing it. That's where we're missing a lot of, we're missing the boat, right? Because we want them to be in here contributing. They are healthier, in general, and they're essentially offsetting the fact that we've got people who are older and tend to just, you start developing the issues, right? They're covering essentially the costs of our older employees. So yeah, we have older employees in comparison to our peer groups. And some of that might have to do with the fact that you're a college graduate, first year teacher, you're probably, I don't know, 21, 22. You're eligible to stay on your parents' health insurance till you're 26. Right. So if you have the blessing of being able to do that, I would assume that a lot of these younger teachers, entry-level teachers, are probably, not having to worry about health insurance because mom and dad are going to cover me for at least another 4 to 5 years. And by the time they get into, being 27, they may think about it, or they may decide to do something else because unfortunately the attrition at the early level, right, is higher. So yeah. And our highest, the highest cost of our health insurance is our drug benefit. We have a very rich benefit. And unfortunately, it's anti-diabetics. We spend the most money on anti-diabetic medications. So there's a lot of factors in there. Last one that I wanted to share is, because this is rumbling around, is moving to the state of Arizona plan. I know the governor is looking, or I believe the governor or a member of the legislature is trying to put a committee together to look at moving teachers particularly, and I don't know if that eventually will include other employees to the plan, to the state's plan. So the cost to the district is cheaper, even more so than what we, it'd be like $6 million less expensive to the district. It'd be about $3 million for employees, which is kind of what they're paying now. Employees, I don't think, did I put it in here? I didn't put it in here, but employees pay about $3 million already. Oops, wrong slide. So they only have two plans, a PPO and a high deductible health plan with $1,500. They do provide a health savings account. So the one thing that I wanted to say is anytime a district exercises the option to join the state health plan, they have to notify by January 15th. So we've certainly kind of skipped over that date. You are required to participate for 2 years. So you can't just like, I'm going to dip my toe in the water for the next 12 months and get out if things change. No, you got to do it. You got to commit for 24 months. You accept all of their benefit plans, their designs, their providers, their premiums, all the conditions that the state sets. Essentially, you give up your ability to negotiate. You let the state do it for you. And whatever they say, you got to do. So like right now, their providers are Blue Cross Blue Shield is the PPO and United is their high deductible. If next year they decide, oh, we're just going to change everything to Aetna and my provider's not there, we have no control. So just that's a caveat. We also have to reimburse ADOA, the Department of Administration, with the administrative and operational costs. So above and beyond, I don't know what those are. So what I'm presenting to you is just the premiums. I don't know what the admin cost would be for them to take on a district of our size to participate. And then the premiums that I put in here assume an 8% increase to FY25. Open enrollment at the state doesn't start until October, so their FY25 premiums are not currently available, but their 24 ones are. So I'm just assuming 8%, since that's kind of like the national average anyhow. So that already accounts for a potential increase down the road. If the and only the governing board can make this decision. And the other caveat is this is only for medical insurance. So the district would have to continue to cover all the other things that we currently do that are not related to medical. So that includes the prescription drug benefit. So yeah, so that's a lot in a nutshell. I don't know if you have questions.
That last plan there, so it saves the district money. Would it save employees money too?
It would save employees money because their premiums would be significantly lower. I mean, just looking at the PPO for employees, I mean, a monthly $218, whereas right now they pay well over $1,000. So the monthly savings to an employee who wants to cover their family is like $1,000 a month.
And those savings are in like every bracket, whether it's PPO 1,500, spouse. Okay.
Yeah, because even this one is about half of what you currently pay. So right now, a single only in PPO pays about $90. They pay about $47. So there definitely is a lot of savings. The district is picking up a bigger tab on a monthly basis. What's interesting is like the spouse plan is like the second most expensive other than covering families. So it's like probably because you're covering two adults, I assume, but I don't, maybe.
Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, so Ricky, you had mentioned though that it seems as though there was other costs that are not associated within these plans that you're showing us that would be something that either the employee would have to pick up or that TUSD would have to pick up. Can you explain that again?
So the Department of Administration would charge us basically like an admin fee for managing, the fact that they're going to cover all of us, so they're going to cover the district and they're going to do just all the administrative end. of it. And so I don't know what that cost is. I tried to find out and see if like there are no school districts that do this. So there was no way for me to say like, hey, school district X, what do you guys pay in admin costs? So just to think about, if it's anywhere more than 10% of that $34 million, then it's a wash.
Okay.
I don't think it'd be that high, but you know, it is
Right.
still that's the one variable that's unknown.
But is everything else covered in these? I'm saying for as far as for the employee that is currently covered. So is there something that there would all of a sudden now be this gap that medication costs are going to be different or you know some
Potentially, yes, because the once you join the medical plan that they have, the pharmacy benefit plan is incorporated into that,
Mhm.
right? And so you'd have to go with whatever the PBM, the pharmacy benefit manager, is doing. So like right now we have CVS Caremark, right?
Mhm.
They could have a completely different one with a completely different set of benefits that could potentially increase the cost of certain types of medications versus what we have now.
Okay.
So yeah, there could be some underlying pieces in there on a case by case that could affect an employee that I didn't dive into it that deep. I was really looking at the high level of premiums.
Okay. Yeah, I just because there has been a push for years with the belief that this program was better than what most districts are able to provide. And so if that really is the case, right, like then there's reason for us to dive deeper. So I mean, but it's very interesting because it's something that education groups, you know, not just the union, but education groups have been discussing this concept for years. If this is something that's beneficial, just because you're joining a larger group, to me that seems at least worthwhile for TUSD to uncover.
Right. And this doesn't assume like the whole age piece, Jason. You know, I don't know that maybe this would incentivize the 20 and 30 somethings among our faculty and staff to say, oh, cool, you know, I'll do that for, you know, $20 a pay period or whatever the case may be, versus today. So, you know, I'm just assuming that 85% of people on the high deductible health plan will move to PPO because now it's cheaper and it's a lower deductible. But even then, by moving like, you know, almost 9 out of 10 people over to a cheaper plan, that's equally robust. It's still about $4 million cheaper than what we're going to pay next year. So
you had mentioned that with the state of Arizona plan, they would be able to change the like company that it's with, whether they go from Blue Cross to Aetna. But if an employee is paying for the PPO option, they would still be able to go wherever, right? So if they happened to change, let's say they decided to change to Aetna, the employee would still have an opportunity if they were on that 1500 plan to decide, hey, my doctor isn't covered under this new company, so I'm going to move to PPO so that I can stay with my doctor.
yeah, I mean, at that point, the out of network thing kicks in, right? If they're not in network under a new provider, then you have to just kind of deal with the out of network consequences. And generally, they don't cover more than like 50% of the cost of an out of network. So yeah, there's a few caveats in there that's kind of like you're at the whim of the madman, right? Because when they tell us it's changing, it's changing.
Dora, go ahead.
Looking at this state of Arizona plan, who would, if obviously I'm sure there's those admin fees, who would be paying for those? Would it be TUSD, the employee, or both?
It could be both. Right now, the admin fees that we have in our current plans are split between the district and the employee. So, you know, certainly it could be both, or the district could decide to pick up the whole thing. It would be depending on what that number looks like, frankly, to kind of make that decision.
Right, because I'm
Um,
looking at that 47 just for the employee itself.
right.
And I mean, compared to the first plan that we looked at was $96 with an 8% increase. If we add that, whatever percentage or admin fees. I'm not sure how much the employee would be saving.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's unfortunately the great unknown. That's the part I don't have. That's certainly something I can ask ADOA and say, hey, if we wanted to explore this, what does an admin fee look like?
Right.
And dig a little deeper into that. I mean, obviously, like I said, the ship unfortunately has sailed for fiscal year 25. Because not only that, the with us, we're self-insured, so we'd have to go back and talk to the Employee Benefits Trust Board. And they'd have to agree to make any significant change like this. If that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
Right.
I think this plan sounds interesting. So I don't know how others would feel about this, but I'm thinking possibly a recommendation for the board to investigate whether this plan would be a good option for us. Since we do have a whole year to kind of figure out whether it's an option or not, whether it would be beneficial for us. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, Taylor, if that's a motion, I like it. I would maybe want to see to me, the one specificity is it's okay that we did not hit the January 15 deadline this time, because I don't think if we would have met in October, or pardon me, if we would have met in December, that would have given enough time anyways to then say, oh, board, get all these pieces together, finance, get it all together, everybody get it together in that short of a timeline. What I don't want is for this type of motion to then miss the timeline for next year. So if that means that we're pushing it to the board, or the board's pushing it back to the BAC, and that if that literally means like, well, to get this ball rolling, the BAC needs to get together this summer. I can commit myself to making that a priority. I just think there's enough intrigue and interest that I'd like to see us follow down that path, and ultimately be able to say to the TUSD staff, yeah, we did our due diligence as the governing board did and the BAC. Yeah, this is a better plan because of XYZ, or it looks better on the surface, but it actually is going to be detrimental for whatever reason. So to me, that would be the one addition that I'd like to see to what you presented, is with a very clear understanding that we as in the BAC, will not do work such that we miss the deadline for January 15th, 2025.
Yeah, Albert, go ahead.
I agree with that, and Ricky, thank you for bringing this up. I was a customer of that state plan for a little while, so I understand that really well. But I agree with Jason that and what you said as well, that maybe that's part of the motion as we entertain that. And I too will make myself available in the summer if need be to address this.
So I'll go ahead and move that we recommend that the governing board take a look at the Arizona State Health Plan for consideration for approval in January 2025.
I'd like to second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? And then I'd like to go back to like considerations for this year for those other three options. Personally, I feel like that original one is the best one. I'm not a fan of taking away options from people. So I think it's pretty fair to just share the cost of increases across the board. So I'll go ahead and move to approve that first option where everybody's kind of sharing that 8% increase.
I seconded.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstain? All right, wonderful. I want to just really quickly go back to the fine arts position, did anyone have any discussion on the fine arts side of things from 6.1? Ricky or Natalie, did either of you have any input as to kind of what the board was looking for us with the fine arts?
To be honest, not really. I think we just want to hear exactly what we want to bring to us that we can discuss. There's nothing that stands out unless Ricky, I can't remember because it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, no, there wasn't really anything, I think it wasn't anything specific. I think it was along the same vein of the school safety positions that you all talked about with Joe, which is, is there a recommendation to talk about how we fund these, what we do, what we shouldn't do? So, you've all gotten a really good kind of background from Dr. Ashcraft. And so again, if you have a recommendation, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. Unless Natalie, who is now president, really, really wants one.
Yeah, I personally didn't really have anything on that. If any other members have anything to say about that, can talk about that. Yeah, Albert, go ahead.
Not necessarily a motion, but recalling the presentation and what I know of the program generally across the district, from the time I was there to the time since then, that these types of programs are so instrumental and so valuable to our students and their families and to our schools, that we continue to find ways and explore ways to fund these programs at a higher level. I know that it's challenging, again, in these times to fund a lot of things that we want to do. But I think this has to be a priority for the district because there is a correlation with academic achievement in these types of programs. So I just wanted to say that before we end it.
Yeah, Dora, go ahead.
Well, I have to agree with Albert. I was a principal and I can only say wonderful things. It's all connected to the academic achievement of the students, and it's all research-based. You have to look at what science really says about the left and right side of the brain itself. So it is all supported by research, scientific research, that we do need to make this a priority for our district.
Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Maybe it comes across as fluff. I don't think that would be the intention, though. I don't see why such a motion wouldn't be in order as a reminder, right? Because we have, over the last few years, we have, as BAC, given motions that really were just a reminder to the governing board that we see the depth and value that the fine arts can provide to our students and to our community. So again, I don't think it'll, I think I know we have a very supportive governing board, but it's certainly, I don't think it would be lost on them to have another reminder from a group that's looking at the budgetary perspective of that, but saying that it has great value for our students and for the community.
Yeah, I can definitely agree to that if there's anyone that wants to formulate some sort of motion about that. So I'm thinking it could just read like, we recommend that the governing board continue to prioritize fine arts in future budgets. Jason, go ahead.
No, I think that's suits us well, and I'd be happy to second that motion.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstain? All right, thank you, Joan, for being here.
Thank you all, everybody. Really appreciate your support.
Thank you, Joan.
All right, with that, we will go ahead and move to our last item for our study and action items, the priority on the desegregation allocations. Ricky, do you have anything you want to start us off with?
Yeah, I've got a really quick presentation for all of you. So last month I gave you all just, kind of a really quick synopsis of what we're looking to do when it comes to reallocating some of our DSEG funds into some priorities for next year. So I've come back with the recommendations for reductions or reallocations in departments and what that's going to look like. So let me share my screen. Okay, so so these are recommendations, and I'll just recap a couple of things, just because we were all drinking eggnog last couple of weeks. So we received over $276 million in ESSER, right? ESSER 2 and 3 required that 20% of our funds be used for what's called learning loss. Part of that, the district invested in positions for learning loss, counselors, kinder teachers, social workers, math reading interventionists, RTI teachers, and teacher assistants. All of these positions are slated to end by June, the end of June, with the ESSER funds set to expire by the end of September. Now, the reallocations, the proposal is that we're going to use desegregation funding to reallocate to support some of these ESSER funded learning positions. We're unable to support all of them. The price tag to do all of them approaches $20 million. That's just not sustainable based on our current funding situation. So the recommended DSEG reallocation that we're looking at is about $4.5 million. All the departments are presented with, what the reallocation plan looks like for fiscal year 25. And they've provided recommendations for where they're looking to make some changes. Just to remind you, there were departments that were exempted at the request of the governing board from reallocations, and in some instances at the request of the administration. African American Student Services, Alternatives to Suspension, Family Engagement, Fine Arts, Interscholastics, Language Acquisition, the Magnet Department, Mexican American Student Services, the Regional Superintendents, and the TUSD Prep and Professional Development Academy. Let me clarify what the regional superintendents, the reason they're exempted is because we have in-house suspension teachers or ISI teachers that are funded, that are placed in their departments. But those positions are all located at schools. So that's why we exempted them, because they're part of that alternatives to suspension model. These are the reallocations that we're recommending for next fiscal year. And these are all subject to approval by the board on January the 30th. So advanced learning experiences, a reduction of 25,000, curriculum development, a reduction of 200,000, equity, diversity, and inclusiveness, a reduction of 622,138, human resources, a reduction of $1 million, the legal services department, a reduction of 595,224, multicultural curriculum, 25,000, the operations department, 100,000, technology services, 800,000, and transportation, just over 2.1 million. Now, this turnover and attrition has a negative number. That's because part of the plan is, part of these reallocations is to put money back into this line item that we call turnover and attrition. And I'll explain what that is. My predecessor created a negative, essentially a deficit or a negative line item in DSEG with the idea that we're going to overspend DSEG by X dollar amount, but it'll come down by the fact that we're going to have turnover and attrition throughout the year of various positions that are funded through DSEG. Teachers, resign, people retire, whatever the case may be. And those salaries are not going to be paid for whatever time period those positions go unfilled. That would essentially offset this TNA line, right? But this line is now over $4 million. We know we're not going to have turnover and attrition that approaches $4 million. We need to balance this out. And this is one way we're doing it, is we're going to take about 1.3 million and we're going to reduce that line item against that turnover and attrition line. unfortunately, I hate to call it this, but it's a budget balancing gimmick. A lot of it has to do with the fact that when we budgeted with the plaintiffs, when the plaintiffs were had to play a bigger role, I should say, in the DSEC budgeting process. Their comment was always, well, you're going to lose people, so you can spend a little bit more here because you're going to save over here in staffing for the most part. That's not bearing out as much. We still have turnover and attrition, but because it's a higher cost, now that we're spending on salaries, that already offsets that TNA. So we're not really realizing savings because those savings are already going into the fact that we're having to pay people a bit more. So these are the reallocations in DSEG. Now, I will point out that for the EDI department, it's a complete loss of their budget. And so one thing I will point out is that we're looking at not essentially phasing out we're essentially looking at reallocating the department budget into departments that focus on EDI activities that are closer to the student and less on the administration. So the $622,000 will be reallocated to these areas. So Asian American refugee will get $50,000. The African American Student Services will receive $100,000. ALE, $75,000. Assessment and evaluation will receive $50,000. We have a research project manager there that focuses on analytics related to the DSEG order, and we continue to need to do that. Our communications and media relations will receive $66,138. They do all of the advertising and all of the marketing for all of the magnet schools. So obviously that's relative to our enrollment. Counseling, $30,000. Culturally relevant pedagogy and instruction, $50,000. GATE, $30,000. Mexican American Student Services, $100,000, and student relations, $50,000. So these departments that are more focused down at the kind of the student and the school level are going to receive a reallocation of EDI, so that a lot of the work that EDI does isn't necessarily lost, but is now committed to being done by departments that are closer to the ground. So what are the next steps? We're currently finalizing a performance impact analysis on these reallocations. So one of the requirements that we committed to in our post-unitary plan is that anytime we were going to make significant changes in budgets or FTE, that we were going to create these PIAs that are going to be available publicly, but also are going to be submitted to the governing board for their review and approval. The governing board is the only one who can say, give us essentially their authorization to move forward with the plan. The recommendation is to retain math interventionists, reading interventionists, and response to intervention teachers only. Those are the only positions that are currently funded from ESSER that will continue to be funded using DSEG, this DSEG reallocation. The ESSER and DSEG positions impacted by the funding changes for next fiscal year have been notified. We currently have about 337 employees that are being impacted in some degree or another. Some people are full-time, some people are part-time, but we notified all of them that essentially the portion of their jobs that may be funded through ESSER is going away at the end of June. The board will evaluate the PIA a week from Tuesday on the 30th, and all of these budget changes, if they approve, will be made in fiscal year 25. As part of our budgeting process. So any questions?
Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Ricky, on the previous slide, you talked about 337 positions, and not the positions that are listed. What would be the types of positions that would be included in this 337 employees?
Teacher assistants is a big one. MTSS facilitators, multi-field system of support facilitators, is another big chunk. We have some social workers, some counselors that are out there as well. We do have some credit recovery teachers. They're not paid full-time. They're paid usually for an hour or two, so not an entire job. But whatever component of their job is funded for like a credit recovery, usually in the high schools, that chunk of their job will be eliminated. So the potential is they get to be there, but the school will have to find funding in order to make that teacher whole if necessary. And then we've got a lot of administrative jobs. All of the administrative jobs are being eliminated. We've got some HR people, we've got some project management people, some TS folks. So we've got a number of other people administratively that are going to have their jobs, those jobs are not going to be there.
To follow up, Ricky, so MTSS, but what about the curriculum, like CSPs? Are those also or no?
No, so I did mention these in here, but curriculum service providers, CSPs, are going to be funded through Title. So Title I and Title II will pick up all of the ESSER funded CSPs. Most CSPs are already funded through Title II anyhow. There were very few for the schools that didn't get title money. And we will be picking those up in Title I or Title II. So CSPs are not going to be on it. They're just being moved off of ESSER. That's why they're not necessarily being impacted job-wise.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are schools required to have one MTSS at each site?
No,
Okay,
there's
so
not a requirement.
like from a
We do.
principal,
Sorry, we do have a lot of MTSSs that are MTSS facilitators that are funded through DSEG. Those will remain. So, these are really only the ones that are funded through ESSER. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but a lot of schools already have DSEG funded MTSS positions. Those are fine. But there isn't a requirement. I know that the DSEG ones was the requirement, and that's where we committed, and that's why those aren't being shifted. It's the ESSER ones were provided to those schools that didn't have DSEG.
okay. So for these positions that are impacted, like especially MTSS, the counselors, the social workers, it would be up to the principal at that site to determine whether they can find room in their budget to continue funding it or to just eliminate the position.
That's correct. And we did communicate to principals on thinking about that. In some instances, I mean, some principals have already thought ahead and they've identified sources of funding to keep whatever position, or positions in some cases, that they want to continue to fund on their own. Otherwise, part of the notification that people who are being affected, in the notification that they're receiving, they're being told about, obviously other opportunities for them to remain with the district in a different capacity, because certainly we don't want to lose them. The TAs, I will speak specifically about them. So that was probably by far and away the largest group of employees that are going to be impacted is teacher assistants. Some schools may continue to fund them with other funding sources, which is fine. One of the things that we're telling them is we have a significant number of exceptional ed TA vacancies. Probably in the neighborhood of like 40 to, no, I believe 80-ish vacancies. They are higher paid than non-ex-ed TAs. They require some training, but we're telling these TAs, look, there are these ex-ed positions. They have a higher compensation. Yeah, they have higher requirements to, training requirements. We will pay for you to get trained, right? There's some CPR training. There's some other kind of training that they have to go through. Whatever the cost that is, the district will pick up the tab so that you can continue to have that job if you want it, right? Obviously, we're kind of offering it. And I know exceptional ed will take any well-qualified individual who wants to do the job.
Yeah, I think that's great. Hope a lot of people join that opportunity. We would love to have more exit.
I hope so. Yeah, we're definitely targeting TAs for sure.
Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
I'll let Dora and then come back to me.
Okay, yeah, Dora, go ahead.
Just to make sure the CSPs, is that a priority still for the district to make sure that they have a CSP at every site?
I can't speak to whether that's a priority for the district because I don't know. That would be a question I would put to Dr. Hewitt, to Flory Hewitt, to ask. But I mean, given the fact that we're going to continue to fund them, I would say that they are a priority, right? Because we're finding a home for all of those.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Jason.
Thank you, Taylor. So I'll start by saying I'm really Ricky, I'm really excited actually about the way that your department and that the district has chosen to act towards employees. I know that sometimes TUSD at times gets a bad rap, but the fact that what I'm hearing is employees are told well in advance, and here's some other job opportunities, and specifically TAs who are, folks that sometimes are discarded, just as a an act. So that's really, for me, that's heartening to know that the district was so compassionate towards the employees. And I guess, Taylor, prior to us making a recommendation, I do think, and it's been mentioned by a couple of people, my only hesitation, I can support all of what has taken place with an understanding of the financial realities. I guess maybe this is with our board member within the discussion here. My concern is social workers, counselors, more than it is at MTSS per se. Not to suggest that MTSS hasn't served really strong roles at our schools, but I just think we are still reeling, and not even necessarily specifically from COVID, as much as we are reeling in a community where there's a lot of kids who are in dire need of the support from schools. And so I think that's the one piece as we move towards a recommendation that I'd like to see us push, is a priority from the governing board to, in any way possible, to retain all social workers and counselors wherever possible.
I agree.
So I'll just kind of add one quick comment. We're probably talking about less than, I want to say less than like 6 total social workers and counselors. So we're not talking about a huge cadre of individuals. Obviously, each one of them is important to their schools. And one of the reasons that we didn't target them is because we have so many vacancies already in the area of social work and counseling that we cannot hire for. So we're hopeful that these individuals will decide to continue to be a counselor in the district, maybe just not at the school that they're currently assigned to, or to do social work. We have these positions already, and they're hard to fill. I mean, like any other thing, but these are obviously master's level positions, and those are really tough to fill. So I know that's not like the best answer, but we just, that's why we kind of felt comfortable. It's just the number is so low and the vacancies are pretty high.
Dora, go ahead.
I just wanted, this is not a question, this is more of a statement. And I do know that Dr. Fridas did some research on the impact of these positions, especially the math and reading interventionists. And I really like the way it's being decided based on what makes more impact to a school and to students' academic achievement. So I think, I just want to say thank you, Ricky, and everybody else that is part of this, because it's all data driven and research based as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Dora. Yeah, that's something that Dr. Trujillo was very adamant about, is to make sure that, look, if we're going to focus on a specific group of individuals, let's focus on the ones that have the greatest impact on academic achievement and are closest to kids. So that's why we kind of tasked Dr. Freitas to spend some time evaluating this. And you guys can all go back and look at this week's board meeting if you didn't have the opportunity to look at it. And she provided a presentation on the data for how a student who had access to an interventionist, how they moved academically, right? And we know we're going to need that, because we know that even though we did an amazing job with school letter grades, next year's not going to be as pretty, right? Obviously, growth is year over year. And so we know that the need for these interventionists is only going to become that much more important. So it was important for Dr. Trujillo to have us provide that data to the governing board and to the community in advance of doing this PIA, right? So let's make the case ahead of time, because if the board or the community felt uncomfortable with what we were talking about, then we would have probably changed directions. So I appreciate that, Dora. Believe me, we've been kind of like like this whole time.
I know these are tough decisions that need to be
Yeah.
made, but you're making it in a wise way, the most impact for students.
All right, I would like to, at this point, go ahead and motion that we recommend to the governing board, the reallocations as mentioned. Jason, go ahead.
Would you feel comfortable with that motion, but with the addition of, prioritizing retention of social workers and counselors?
Yeah.
And I totally appreciate what you were saying, Ricky. It's not to negate what you had said at all.
I shake my fist at you, sir. But I understand.
I'll second the motion.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstain? All right. Next is the 7.1 request for information. If anybody has anything. All right, 7.2 future, oh, sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. I wanted one last piece before you ended up closing the meeting is all. So do you want me to do it now?
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. I just wanted to thank everybody, but especially I wanted to thank Taylor. I think you've done a marvelous job being our chair. And it's not an easy job, as I know, and as Ricky knows. And so you stepping in, just want you to know you've done a pretty special job. Well done.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all putting your trust in me.
Well done, Taylor.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, so 7.2, future goals and priorities. So I will take these recommendations that we've come up with tonight to the next governing board meeting. I will present those and then we will join again next year. With that, I will go ahead and motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstain? All right, thank you all so much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Taylor.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Ricky.